lot of this has to do with, like, I mean, a lot of these people have, ends up coming out that a lot of these kids have had history of bullying. They've had a bad childhood, or they've had all of this stuff. So why don't we have therapists in schools? Why we have a counselor? A counselor is not a therapist. Okay. A counselor literally could be me.
I just wanted you to clarify.
Yeah. Okay, so a counselor could literally be me out of college, not having, like, a psychology background.
Any sort of mental health experience whatsoever.
And that's not okay. Also,
for anyone saying that the funding isn't there, the military just asked for $50 more billion to boost the military budget up from, it was like $670 billion in 2019, and they want it to be $720 billion in 2020.
Space
but
Force.
Space Force. But the education system had $60 billion as theirs, so
and continues to face cuts.
Yeah, and continues to face cuts. So the money is there. It is very hard to argue that there's not money to put, like, a psychologist in schools.
And the sad thing is, with that rebuttal, people are going to argue, well, our military is going to be defending our countries that these people are going to be living in.
Okay, but we live here.
I was going to say, the sad thing is the money is there, and not saying that necessarily one deserves it more than the other, but the money needs to be distributed in order to be able to accurately protect the people who are going to be in those future positions.
Here's an awesome, accurate statistic that I know off the top of my head. Our military budget is equal to the next top 6 countries' military budgets combined.
But here's the thing:
no
is, like,
one's messed with us.
That is correct.
We need to stop, like, taking
wars.
money away from our education system, and we need to give money to our education systems because of the fact that, like, a counselor should not be who kids that need to talk to somebody are going to. Counselors, I'm sorry, I've talked to counselors in school, and they don't know what the
and
they don't know what to say.
Especially if your argument is, you know, the kids who are living in today's society have grown up with mass shootings, have grown up with serial killers, have grown up with rapists, have grown up with suicide. You know, all these different...
And it may not be different than the old kids, but they know about it.
And that's the thing. We grew up in a day where...
Social media.
It is... I mean, yes, with social media, but we grow up in a day and age where it's not taboo to hear about it on a Wednesday afternoon with your 20 other friends.
It's more common than taboo.
Exactly. And if you're going to be in that society, and if you're going to raise a child in that society, or be a person who is an influencer in that society, you have to be able to talk about it and be spoken to. Like, you have to be able to be in the position to understand. And I don't think if you've been around that kind of environment, that if you've lived in that day and age where, again, it's more common to hear about a mass shooting than it is to hear about someone going to the moon. Like, it's just...
Well, that hasn't actually happened since the first movie.
It's all about getting people in the right mindset.
And that's exactly, like, I think that one, it shouldn't be one therapist per school. Like, my school had over 400 people in my graduating class. Like, one therapist is not enough for 400 people.
Look at the NBA. The NBA just passed that.
Exactly.
Every single...
The NBA?
They have to have
every single...
The Basketball Association?
Like the Basketball Association. Just passed
Not like
that
the
every single team has to have a certified mental health therapist, not a counselor.
Man, if the NBA can do it,
that every
the
single
government can do it.
Team has to have a certified mental health therapist as a part of their roster, whatever you want to call it, their coaching roster.
My solution is that we have multiple therapists per school. Like, you have to start therapy at a young age. This goes on till you're, like, out of high school and stuff. You have to talk to people, because people who are bullying, and people who are being bullied need to be talking to a therapist. They need to be talking to a therapist to determine, like, one, to be able to work through the things that they're feeling. Two, to determine if they're mentally fit or not. When you turn 18, you then have all of this mental health background. Yeah, you then have a record of whether or not you are mentally fit. And you know what the thing is that if people are going through therapy from such a young age, most of these people will know how to deal with their issues healthy, like in a healthy manner, instead of, like, having all these things that they were taught not to talk about, that they were taught not to deal with, that they were taught
and
that,
if they don't,
oh, I'm sorry, you're being bullied at school, suck it up. Like, they won't be taught
That's
that
what I would
stuff. They'll be
say
taught.
if I was a dad.
Don't be dad.
Like, rub it some dirt in.
That's the problem, is that people need to know that they can talk about stuff so that way they don't end up angry. And they don't end up in a poor mental state.
The sad thing is, I think if it goes on both ends of the spectrum, because, like, me personally, I was bullied as a child.
Yeah.
Like, severely.
No, I'm sorry.
You go one way or the other.
Exactly. Like, severely, like, for my weight, severely for, you know, whatever it was, the fact that I, fun fact, had 2 moms. Going back on that, like, there was a lot of people who, myself as a child, they were not particularly fond of. And it was easy to pick on me because I was very sensitive, I was very emotional, and I wasn't somebody who was going to stand up for myself. I was an easy target to bully. And I think in that aspect, it was very beneficial for me to live in a home where I could talk to my parents about it. I could talk to my parents. I could, you know, talk to my older companions, people who I was surrounded by. And it wasn't something...
So what I think that you're getting at is you've got all these people who are being bullied and need someone to talk to.
Not even necessarily. I think if you're a kid growing up in today's society, there are so many people who are willing to objectify you and that are willing to pick on you and things like that.
Relax.
Bubby.
Well, and there's just so much going on in the world that nobody knows how to process or digest with having social media and,
Close your mouth.
you know, the news and that stuff. Like, nobody knows how to deal with that. The stuff that's in the news. Like, again, they're desensitized. Like, it's normal.